I can do it or Maureen, or.
If you have it in front of you, why don't you just go ahead?
All right, we're going to start with public comment. Then we have a presentation, and I see our guests are here from Quiet Clean Winchester. We'll look at a consideration of Board of Health goals with a possible vote today. We have approval of some minutes. The director's update will include Dat Butler from the Coalition for a Safer Community. We'll have a COVID update, old business, new business, and adjournment. Do either of my colleagues please raise your hand if you have anything you'd like added under new business for today? Okay, all right. Under there, I would like, depending on how soon we're able to get to it, to have a consideration of a 5-member board of health and to look at a women's reproductive health statement. So that's under new business, and we'll see if we can get to that. The first order of business then is public comment. And is there anyone who has raised their hands for public comment? All right, so let me say that the Board of Health, well, I do see some hands going up. So the Board of Health welcomes input from members of the public. I'd like to remind everyone that the purpose of public comment is to permit members of the public to express their opinions on matters within the purview of the Board of Health. It's not a dialogue, and the board is under no obligation to respond to comments or questions. We request that speakers are respectful of board members, staff, and the public, and that comments are directed at policies and actions. Please refrain from personal comments about any individuals. Please state your name and full address. Comments are limited to 2 minutes per person and 1 comment per meeting. The total amount of time for public input is limited to 10 minutes. So Ms. Murphy, I see at least one hand up there.
Yes, Susan DeLeo had her hand up first. So Susan.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for allowing me to make a comment. Susan DeLeo, Taft Drive, Winchester, also town meeting member, precinct 5. I know that you don't normally take questions, but when you announced the agenda and you said COVID update, this pertains to whether or not I make a comment or not. You said COVID update. In one of the agendas I've seen, it says possible vote. Is that still an accurate assessment of the agenda?
Again, Mr. Leo, it's not a dialogue, but we may choose to take a vote today. It is on the agenda.
Okay, because when you announced the agenda, you didn't mention the part that says possible vote. So I wanted to be sure. So my comment is a mandate in the town of Winchester, which would obviously affect these schools. And I'm absolutely against taking that measure of a mandate for the Winchester public schools, especially in these last few weeks of school. These children have had incredibly disruptive school years. This would add just another disruption to their school year. The kids are doing great. The kids are going to be okay. And we need to focus on moving forward and pushing personal responsibility and making sure people are taking care of themselves and following the rules for themselves. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. DeLeo. Do you want to?
So we also have the next person was iPhone 3, but if you could please identify yourself, name and address, please. iPhone 3, I don't know who you are.
How you doing? It's Stephen McCabe, town meeting member, precinct 8, Hemingway Street. And I just want to second what Susan DeLello was saying about reinstituting a mask mandate at this point with whatever there is, 2.5, 3 weeks of school left. Enough's been taken away from the kids over the past several years with COVID. They're not getting really sick with this. And the other part of it I would like to add, I heard the COVID update with a possible vote there. It sounds like that's on the agenda towards the end of the meeting. And I would say the majority of the people on this call are here for the COVID update. So can we please move that to the front of the meeting once the public comment is completed? Thank you.
We will be sticking to the agenda as it is, but we can continue on with the next.
Can I ask why that is?
It is not a dialogue. I'm sorry, sir. But we have an agenda. We have speakers. We're moving forward. We have 10 minutes total for public comment.
So I see Erica Hoffman is next, please.
Hi, thank you. Yes, Erica Hoffman. I would just like to sort of reiterate what the other two prior speakers were saying. I think you should leave it as a public choice. You know, the numbers are going to fluctuate. You're going to have your highs and your lower points, and it's really just taking your own personal responsibility and what people feel comfortable with doing. So whether they choose to wear a mask or not, it's up to the person. And then also, I think you mentioned something about whether you should move the Board of Health to a 5-member position. I would be very for that, because I think it's a lot of work that the 3 current members do. And I think it will just provide a bit more balance, and also being able to maybe, because it sounds like you're trying to broaden a lot of the scope of what the Board of Health does as well. So I think it would be beneficial to move to a 5-person member board. Thank you.
Thank you. I am puzzled, I must say, by the comments that are coming in. And maybe Ms. Hoffman, since you're still on there, can you tell me why you are thinking that the board might institute a mask mandate today?
Because on your agenda item, you mentioned a possible vote, and it's like, what else would you sort of be voting on? And then also a couple of days ago, I think it was the Board of Health posted something to the Winchester residents page. And it was like, oh, you know, numbers are going up, the water waste is going up. It was, to me, it felt very scaremongering, and it sounded like you're moving towards trying to reinstate like a mask mandate. Yeah.
Thank you for the clarification. The board has not put anything on Facebook, and I was puzzled. Yes, the possible vote did not include, and actually could not include today, a vote on a mandate per se, because the public should just understand that's a process that needs to go through legal counsel. So that piece would not be happening today. But I was just curious at the comments coming in. Okay, we can continue.
Sure.
Ms.
So
Murphy.
Christina Ronan is next.
Good afternoon, Christina Ronan, 129 Cambridge Street. My comments again go towards, I think what Board of Health member Trimarchi was wondering, which is we're all very concerned as parents of young children, elementary age children in Winchester, about a mask mandate being enforced again, particularly in these last 3 weeks of school. I think I speak for many parents that are vehemently against imposing a mask requirement. These kids are all participating in after-school sports and activities. Families are traveling. I'm not sure what a mask mandate would really do, considering all the other activities these children participate in without a mask. So if that's something the board is considering, and even if it's not voting on today, if it's considering it, I think that the board should know that I believe many Winchester parents would be very, very frustrated with having their kids have to put masks on again during the last 3 weeks of these very hot summer days that are ahead of us. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. And I think we have another hand.
Oh, Melissa in Boston. That's what it says.
Oh, hi, Melissa Mathis. Sorry,
We need your last name and address.
Oh, sorry, last name is Mathis, Mathis, and I'm at 287 Highland. I wasn't aware, I don't know what the COVID discussion is going to be about, but I have a daughter in high school, and my view is I would like whatever decisions related to COVID are just data driven, and I can understand maybe elementary school kids, it's a little bit different, but in any event, I would support whatever the Board of Health recommends based on the data for COVID. That's my first point. My second point is I want to support the effort that Quiet Clean Winchester is going to discuss anyway, I know these are quick comments, so I just want to say that I'm fully in support of their efforts to try to rein in a little bit the noise and pollution caused by leaf blowers. Thanks.
Thank you.
Kristen, oh, nope. Kristen Boutwell, yes, please go ahead.
Hi, good afternoon. This is Kristen Boutwell. I live at 1 New Meadows Road. I'm here just to discuss or comment on a potential mask mandate vote or reinstatement. I need this to be data-driven. I need it to be really strongly encouraged by greater bodies of pediatrics, and I'm a nurse practitioner, and I feel like our children's mental health and clarity and emotional states is way more important than the very mild now, for most, COVID-like symptoms that are somewhat flu-like symptoms. And I feel like reinstating and taking away and putting back and reinstating and taking away is very risky for our children as far as their comfort level, their comfort within school. We understand that there is a risk involved. It should be parent decision, not town decision, whether our kids should be in school with masks on. Thank you very much.
And I see one more hand, Ms. Murphy, two more
Yeah,
hands.
Carrie Bartlett. Hi, Carrie.
I think I don't know. Can you guys hear me?
Yes. Go ahead, Carrie, we
afraid
can
that-
hear you.
I think I cannot be heard, so sorry about that.
Carrie, we can hear
I
you.
can't
Go
hear
ahead.
you. But anyways, I was calling in to support, if you can hear me, I was calling in to support quiet, clean land care. So sorry about my lack of connection here.
Yeah, okay. Ms. Bartlett, is that all you wanted to say, or would you like to expand on that? I think we could go ahead with the last hand there, Ms. Murphy.
It's iPhone 3. I think perhaps this person already spoke. Is
Oh,
that-
okay.
It's me. Yes, it is me again. It's Stephen McCabe, town meeting member, precinct 8.
I'm sorry,
just a
one is,
follow-up,
yeah.
We're
Mr.
only letting
McCabe, we're
people speak one time.
restricted to one comment per meeting. So,
Oh, I just wanted to clarify because you mentioned there was no dialogue. And then after, I believe it was Meg's question, you had a dialogue about potentially where she was hearing the comments about the vote on the mandate. And I was just wondering, that seemed like a dialogue. And I was just seeing why that question was asked.
it's not, yeah, okay.
What's that?
We are, I believe, at the end of the, to clarify that, there is no mandate regarding open meeting law that there must be a dialogue. That's what I was saying. So thank you to the entire public who have written in and who have shown up to speak. With that, I think we are done with, I see no more hands, so we can close public comment. And the second item on our agenda are our guests. I'd like to introduce George Wood and Rachel Whitehouse from Quiet Clean Winchester. And Rachel, would you like to take it away from here?
Actually, Woody's going to start off. Thank you very much.
Hi, everyone. I'm George Wood. I go by Woody. Please use that. I'm at 309 Main Street in Winchester, over 30-year resident, raised 2 kids who are now off on their own. I was co-founder of the Energy Committee here in Winchester, served on that board for 4 years. Later, co-founded and co-chaired the Climate Action Committee, the one that predated the current one, and have been an activist in other positions in town. Rachel and I are here to talk about the possible restricted use of gas leaf blowers in town. Rachel will be giving the presentation. We feel that the current use, as we have seen, severely impacts the health of the residents of Winchester's, adults, children, and actually the users of the equipment. And the major impacts are, as you will see in the slides and the data we're presenting, around noise and around the emissions. And those are the two primary reasons why we think this is a matter of interest for the Board of Health. And we thank you very much for your time tonight. I'll hand it over to Rachel. Thanks, Rachel.
Thanks, Woody. Can you see my screen, Ruth, and others on the committee? Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. So Rachel Whitehouse, 9 Hillside Avenue. I'm a 15-year resident and a professional who works in the Longwood medical area in the Harvard Medical School system. I'm not a physician or a clinician, but I have been communicating about health for quite some time. And like many other people, when the pandemic hit, I had always been going into the office and I started to work remotely. And didn't take long in that March, April timeframe of the initial pandemic to suddenly say, what is that noise that goes on all day long in Winchester? And do a little bit of Google searching and you realize what it is. It's the 2-stroke gas engines, and a little bit more searching makes you realize that that there's health risks of that equipment, as Woody talked about. So soon after Quiet Clean Winchester came to be, and it's basically citizens, residents, civic groups, businesses that are working for a quieter, cleaner Winchester by promoting the transition from noisy and polluting gas-powered leaf blowers to quiet and clean electric leaf blowers. Our goals are simple: cleaner, healthier air, a reduction of damaging noise levels, and reducing the environmental impact from lawn care. We have a 3-part approach. One is education for the public, the other is landscaper outreach and advocacy, and the third is a bylaw. Just to quickly go through why gas leaf blowers negatively impact human health, it's really the mechanism of the tool itself, the actual physical tool. They have a 2-stroke engine, which I've come to learn means that they have no internal lubrication. So you have to have the gas tank and you have to put the oil in it, and then that has to be burned to run the leaf blower. And those are not regulated. And so the pollutants greatly exceed those of car emissions. And so we're going to quickly talk through some of the 3 health issues that come to the fore. Very loud, sustained, and damaging low-frequency noise which penetrate walls. That low-frequency noise, people wonder why gas leaf blowers are heard all over town. It's because low-frequency noise travels further and it will go through walls. The dangerous small particulate emissions because of the burning of the oil and the fuel, and then the harmful contaminated dust that's kicked up by the leaf blowers. So the sustained ear damaging noise I mentioned, this gets into the decibels of the gas-powered leaf blowers versus what we're proposing is transitioning to the electric leaf blowers. The data is here on the slide. I hope you can see it, but that a single gas leaf blower emits 77 decibels at 50 feet and roughly 100 decibels at the ear of the operator. And 85 decibels is enough to cause hearing damage after 2 hours of exposure. 100 decibels can cause hearing damage within 15 minutes. And I think we all know that gas leaf blowers are certainly run a lot longer than 15 minutes in town. I wanted to share this slide, which talks a little bit about multiple gas leaf blowers, which is more and more the case. Electric leaf blowers are at least 10 decibels quieter than gas-powered leaf blowers. And because of the compounding effect, it takes 4 electric blowers to equal the noise of 1 gas blower. I'm not sure, Ruth, should I be waiting for questions from the Board of Health or should I just keep going? Okay, thank you. Make sure I'm doing it right. So moving from the damaging health effects from the noise to the air pollution effects on human health that you breathe in. when folks are leaf blowing, everything that's on the ground is being kicked up into the air. Pollen, mold, animal feces, any type of heavy metals, road salt, all the herbicides and pesticides that might have been put on the lawn. So all those things go into the air. We've all seen the clouds of dust that are getting kicked up, and unfortunately, probably many of us have had to walk through them, or our children have had to walk through them to get to where we're going. But worse than that, that dust that's getting kicked up is actually the dangerous small particulate and chemical emissions that come from the burning of the oil and the gas. And it shows here what some of those air pollutants are: carbon monoxide, benzene, fine particulate matter, toxic medicals, and then smog and ozone forming pollutants. On this slide is an instruction manual directly from a Steel backpack leaf blower. Steel is a brand name, and it says right here that the product generates toxic exhaust fumes containing chemicals such as unburned hydrocarbons, including benzene and carbon monoxide, that are known to cause respiratory problems, cancer, birth defects, and other reproductive harm. I think this one is an important slide just to talk about the concentration of these leaf blowers and the emissions that they're producing. The California Air Resource Board has done a lot of work into these two-stroke leaf blowers, and they've calculated that the pollution from 1 hour of using a gas-powered leaf blower is the same as driving a Toyota Camry 1,100 miles, which is about from Boston to the Florida-Georgia line right at the top of Florida. So if you think about all that pollution, if you're driving your car, your Toyota Camry, which I happen to have one, all the way down to Florida, but then you talk about having that gas leaf blower emit all those pollutants in from that 15-hour drive, concentrated in 1 hour into the time, 1 hour time space, and the space of the air pockets around our homes. That's a little bit shocking to think about all that pollution in 1 hour in your home. So what we're proposing is that we join many of our neighbors that are working to restrict the use of the gas leaf blowers, and some have gone so far as to vote already to phase them out by 2026. The reason I put in red Lexington and Arlington is because they are 2 of the 3 communities that border Winchester, and they have actually taken a vote to phase them out by 2026. And when we move to our bylaw, which we're just about to do, we're actually not proposing a phase out for Winchester. We're proposing just limiting the use of the gas leaf blowers to the shoulder seasons, which is really the spring and the fall cleanup. Because from the landscapers that we've talked to in Winchester, they feel that they need these tools still to get the job done. And as I said at the beginning, we are focused on centering the landscapers, understanding that they are important businesses and community members here in Winchester. And many of them have lived here for years and had businesses for years. We're not trying to tell them their business, and we're certainly not trying to hurt their business. Small businesses are incredibly important, and they're telling us that it's not, that they don't feel the equipment's ready for a full phase out, or that they're not ready to do that here in Winchester yet. So we're proposing a shoulder season restriction. I think this is my last slide, and I'm at 10 minutes, so I'm going to just quickly mention, I've already mentioned a little bit of this proposed leaf blower bylaw. We're bringing this as a citizen's petition to the fall town meeting. And like I said, this is not a ban, this is not a phase out. It's to restrict the use of gas powered leaf blowers to the shoulder seasons, which is basically Monday through Friday from April 1 to May 31st, and then October 1 to December 1st. But all year round, you can use your electric leaf blowers, the commercial landscapers can use electric leaf blowers, which have come way down in price and are way up in power and are flying off the shelves at any of the, Ace Hardware or Home Depot, wherever you might shop. They are absolutely flying off the shelves. So the bylaw goes a little bit further into recommending that the town permit commercial landscapers, and that we have an enforcement mechanism, and that this would apply to all members of all town residents, municipal workers, including the DPW and commercial landscapers, and be effective next spring. So a quieter and cleaner Winchester is possible. We think what we're proposing in this bylaw is a small step to get started, and we would appreciate the support of the Board of Health and all of the public that might still be listening.
Thank you very much, Ms. Whitehouse. And just to be clear, when we put out the agenda, I thought that we might be at a position to take a vote today, but clearly the bylaw still needs to go through various iterations, including legal counsel and perhaps some other boards and committees that you'll be approaching. So our goal today is to have a robust conversation here with the Board of Health, and perhaps we can get a sense of the board, but we would not be taking a vote on that particular bylaw. It's not yet ready for that. I see a couple of hands up there. Dr. Sawicki, you were first.
Thank you for your presentation. I just have two questions. One, procedural. I think you alluded to this, Rachel. It's ultimately the bylaw will need to be voted on by town meeting. Is that correct?
Yes.
And so what you will be looking for from the Board of Health is really a vote of endorsement, because ultimately it has to go up to town meeting. Is that correct?
That's right.
Okay, so yeah, I think thank you for the information. I look forward to seeing the bylaw once it's fully vetted and written out. I mean, I think this is a very important area, and I think you laid out the importance of why we need to be thinking about it, and again showed us that neighboring communities have also been thinking about it. I have in terms of questions around this, will this apply at all to any kind of gas-powered other landscaping equipment, mowers, other things that landscapers may use?
Mm-hmm. No, we're focused on the gas-powered leaf blowers. The noise of the leaf blowers is very detrimental and is where an awful lot of the complaints that we hear come from, and so that's why we're focused on quiet, clean.
And then are some of these leaf blowers also, I mean, I understand the commercial landscape use of them. I mean, are many of these products also available for personal use, or are these really mostly that are being used by landscape companies?
I'm not sure I understand your question.
Meaning, I mean, can someone just go to, I mean, are there a lot of people who just in their personal use them because they buy this equipment for home use versus it being sort of commercially used equipment?
So people, residents definitely buy gas-powered leaf blowers and electric leaf blowers. They're all available on the shelf. There's less and less shelf space being given in the retail stores to the gas-powered equipment because the transition to battery-powered land care is happening quickly, just like it's happening in other industries. So I went into Home Depot and bought a commercial grade electric backpack leaf blower for $450, including the battery. And it's the most powerful cubic feet per minute that they sell for gas or electric. And I just—
Which you're currently lending out, right,
Yeah.
Rachel?
Right, as part of our education, we're lending it out to Winchester residents and commercial landscapers who are interested in trying out the equipment.
Thank you.
And we'd encourage anyone on the call tonight, if they know they have a landscaper who wants to try out electric backpacker, we have it available to lend at no cost for a day or two.
Thank you, Dr. Sawicki.
Thanks, Dr. Sawicki. And I see Maureen. Ms. Pimentel, would you like to ask some questions or make some comments?
I just had two questions. Thank you for your presentation. First question, just about the decision to permit and what that permit fee would be and why we would permit. And then the second question just being, were the DPW and landscapers, et cetera, involved in choosing what the shoulder season was? Just because the fall shoulder season seems much longer than the spring. And I just, in, trying to help our small businesses as much as possible, making sure we have good regulation, but also fair regulation.
Okay, so I'm going to try to answer the permit one first. So the permit would be the purpose of the permit, and there's no, we would look to the town to make the decision about what the permitting cost should be. The purpose of the permit is simply to create the list of permitted landscapers, and that would be posted on an annual basis by the town on its website, and so that we could literally hand them a copy of the bylaws. So it's partly a communication mechanism, partly a, I guess they're both communication mechanisms at the end of the day. But we think it would be a low fee, like $25 or something like that. I don't think it's about making money. I think it's about connecting with all the landscapers who come through Winchester. And once you start to pay attention, there's about 30 or 40 of them. I think that I saw 2 new ones driving through today. I've been looking for the truck names, and to see 2 new ones after all this time was sort of surprising. And your second question was about, have we spoken to the DPW about?
You comment just that the DPW and landscapers would be affected. So the shoulder season for the fall seems quite long. It seems like an appropriate amount of time. The shoulder season for the spring seemed quite short. So I just wondered if they were in conversations with you about how these dates and times were chosen, just to make sure that, we're having conversations with all people involved.
Yeah. So we have had some preliminary conversations with the DPW. I'm not sure we've walked through every step of the proposed bylaw with them. Woody, you had that conversation. I don't know if you want to comment.
Yeah, we've had a preliminary conversation, not specifically about dates, but to reach out and inform them that this is a bylaw in development, and that it was going to be a 2 or 3 part conversation with the DPW to get their input. This bylaw would apply to any landscapers working on behalf of the town on municipal property. We found in other communities that they made that exemption, and that the residents were not very pleased about that. We've also, just to mention, spoken to at least 5 or 6 other communities that have either considered or passed bylaws and reviewed their dates, to your question, for allowable leaf blowing. And we've also considered other elements and rejected them. In one community, they did not allow leaf blowers to blow debris in neighboring yards. We thought that was kind of silly and couldn't be enforced. In other communities, they actually put a cap on the decibels measured at 50 feet. And that was to be enforced by the police department. We did not think that was fair to have in Winchester, and we learned that it was very difficult to enforce. And yet another example was that a community mandated that the manufacturing label on the equipment indicate a purchase after a certain date. We thought that was not fair to the landscapers. So we feel what we put forth is almost as strong about what it isn't, and what our neighboring communities have insisted on or tried and been unsuccessful at. And it's why we feel ours is a very fair, and some might consider a watered down version of a restriction on the use of the gas leaf blowers. And we would encourage anyone on the phone or in the future to examine the other communities. And I think and hope you'll find the 12 months of effort we put into the crafting of this to be fair to the landscapers and to the community. Thank you for that question. I hope we've answered it.
So seeing no further hands from my board members here, again, we would not take a vote today, but I'd like to take a sense of the board if we could. And just a show of hands, depending, of course, on the final form of the article after it goes through legal and other boards and committees. Do my colleagues think that consider these health issues of concern and might be in favor of supporting regulation of leaf blowers? It's a theoretical question.
I can see the argument for the health aspects of things and the noise aspect of things. I would need to see more detail and more information before I was able to give a yay or nay.
And Dr. Sawicki?
Yeah, I completely agree here in terms of understanding the potential health impacts. And I think, again, the devil's always in the details. So I think we look forward to seeing the bylaw when it's written and having a discussion around it then.
Thank you, and I concur with my colleagues as well. Yes, we are, I think, in total agreement that there are health concerns around this. We'd really like to support you, but of course, it was going to depend on the final format of the article. And I really, would you like to make any closing comments, Woody or Rachel?
No, I think we're good. Thank you very much. We have, we look forward to coming back to see you. Then it'll be early in the fall with the final bylaw, and speaking to hopefully to many members of the public and landscapers throughout the rest of the spring, summer, and into the fall.
Thank you so much for the presentation. It was illuminating, and I appreciate your coming and visiting us today. We'll look forward to seeing you
Can I
in the
make
fall.
one comment, please?
Thank you for your time.
So sorry to Rachel and whatever, you know, departments or town officials that you may want to write into the article, if you could approach us first and have conversations before this final draft is done, would be appreciated. Thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Sure.
Thank you.
With that, let's move on in our agenda. The next item on the agenda, the third item, is consideration of Board of Health goals with the possibility of a vote today. At our last meeting, we asked a theoretical question, and the answer from both of my colleagues is yes, they would like to begin to establish some Board of Health goals. So I ask both of you to take it away here and let me hear your thoughts. Ms. Pimentel, would you like to start?
I was just trying to pull them up. I had thought that after we talked last, we were going to have another sort of updated document to look at. My question, I agree with the goals. I would like to put some more action behind them if possible, just so that they can somewhat be measured. I'm sorry, I'm just taking a look at them now. So I had sort of thought that after we discussed last time that something else would be brought back to us. But I did
circulate something, which was
yeah. That was before the last meeting.
No, after the last meeting. I can that's okay. It is our health director's goals, and then I put a few that.
Yeah, I have that.
Okay.
That's what I'm looking at. So yeah,
okay.
I mean, I agree with continuing with helping this health department with all of their things. I agree with trying to partner with the school committee. I agree with advocating for mental health, updating communication. I think that there was a little bit of outreach to boards and committees that we could sort of enact more of a teeth to it. And obviously support equity, inclusion, and diversity related to health. So I would be fine with those. I think that with the caveat that maybe we should just, before we finalize them, put a little bit, maybe something measurable in them.
And I'll just add, I think, Maureen, I totally agree that having some measurable sort of deliverables makes sense. When you have a goal, you want to have a goal to what end, not just sort of a topic. I also would want to add that I think we should have, to structure this right, because a board should have goals that are reviewed and reiterated on a regular basis. whether it be annually, let's say, with each new board. It'd be nice to also make sure that there's sort of a point person for each sort of goal within the board that's set, because I think that way the board can then designate an individual to be responsible for meeting those measurable goals, as well as also, being the point person. For instance, if there's communication with another board or another committee or another sort of area within town, that there's one person that the board then designates to be the responsible party for that communication. So I think that would allow for clarity, both for us as we organize the work, as well as for the public and the rest of the town staff and other town boards and committees to know that if there's a particular issue or concern that the board is working on in collaboration, there's a particular person that the board has then designated. So I think in terms of that, I don't think we need to necessarily vote for each item, who's going to be doing what, but I think we should make sure that in that goals document that there is sort of person responsible. And I think that would also help us clarify sort of some of those things as well. And the question to me, though, is, do we need to vote on sort of the specifics of a document, or is it just this sort of, is it just that we agree that we want to come to a consensus that there are some goals? And I think that the goals that have been set out make sense. And I think there can be a little bit more clarity, particularly around sort of who's responsible and what the sort of deliverable should be at the end of sort of a particular period.
Understood, and good comments from both of my colleagues. I would suggest that, yes, we take a little bit of more time with this, and perhaps next month we come back. We can circulate proposed documents, and that would be simply taking a look at what kind of measurables we could put into this and a point person for each of those. I'm really pleased that we're on the same page regarding the goals themselves. And so why don't we defer this, if you're in agreement, till our next meeting, and work on it a little bit further. Discuss it next month.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Thank you. That's good progress. I'm really pleased. All right, approval of minutes. Did you both have an opportunity to look at the minutes that were circulated?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, do I have a proposal, a motion?
I move to approve the minutes from the last meeting that was sent out.
Do we have the date on that? I apologize that I.
May the 9th.
May the 9th, that's right. Maureen, would you like to second that?
I second.
Roll call vote, Dr. Sawicki. Oh, I apologize. Is there any discussion or corrections on the minutes that need to happen?
No.
I didn't find any as well. So yes, roll call vote, Dr. Sawicki.
Yes.
Ms. Pimentel?
Yes.
And that's yes for Ruth Tremarky. So the minutes are approved, and thank you very much. Let's see. So the director's update, and we welcome Dot Butler, and thank you, from the Coalition for a Safer Community.
Okay. Since a few of you are new to the board, and I thought I would go back and give you a year in review, I guess, as we speak. I'm going to do a PowerPoint and a rough view of what we have accomplished, what I call this school season from September to June. That's when we basically do most of our programming and so forth. And let me see if I'm going to be able to do this. I'm going to share my screen, right? Okay. I'm going to pull up my PowerPoint. And I'm going to do a slideshow. Wonders ever cease. Okay, so I'm going to read along because there's a lot of material, and it'll be easier probably for me to cover everything. Right now you're seeing 2021-22 programs that we put together for the community. We try and partner with different organizations within the town, and we work closely with the schools, school nurses, adjustment councils, and so forth. We watch trends. We try and get an idea of what is happening in our town, what does need to be addressed. We listen to the community. Often parents come back to us and say areas of concern that they would like us to bring speakers or some kind of programming forward. So our first one we were very excited about We had Katie Hurley come. It was in person. We were so excited to be coming back in person, being able to see people face to face, have dialogue, enriched in sharing resources and information. As you know, our main concern for 2021 and 2022 was mental health. And it takes on, it all encompasses our concern also for substance abuse. So I think one kind of intertangles with the other. So we brought Katie back. She was highly recommended to us in person. And let me give you a little background on Katie. So we met in person. She approaches things with a positive psychology, okay? She addressed the stress and the pressures that can trigger negative thought patterns in our teens and our tweens. Thoughts about body image concerns starting at an early age can trigger thoughts of self-doubt and symptoms of anxiety and depression in our kids when they spend a lot of time comparing themselves to others. And we're seeing that this is starting at an earlier age. Kids can learn to adapt to positive psychology and work through intrusive thoughts and focus on their strengths. Our audience was made up of mostly parents and educators, and the information presented can be taken away as in help them work with warning signs of the negative things and assist them in changing the mindset by utilizing positive skills. Next, we brought back Katie Greer. Katie Greer is a national internet safety expert. We have had Katie in Winchester a few times. There was a few challenges going on at McCall Middle School in the fall with internet safety, some bullying going on, some inappropriate behavior with some iPhones and other devices. So at the request of some of the parents in town, we brought Katie back. She again was in person, which we were happy about, and she presented how our youth are using such apps as Facebook and Instagram, TikTok, and others. Katie covered what safety rules, social networking, cyberbullying laws, and day-to-day cell phone use. Katie also touched upon how to use social media in a positive way, that it isn't all bad, but it's really important for parents to have these conversations with their kids about using it correctly. She answered questions and shared essential tips to help influence our kids safe. Topics such as fake Instagrams, body image concerns, and how the social media influences are having such an impact on our youth. In attendance was also our community resource officer who works closely at McCall Middle School, Mike DeRosa, and he shared with us some of the concerns that he was seeing. And he was brand new at the McCall Middle School, but he shared with us the things on a day-to-day basis that's brought to his attention. Next up, we had Michael Fowlin come back. He has been someone that our students truly enjoy, and we had some requests from the National Honor Society students to bring him back. This time, because we can only do presentations in smaller groups due to COVID, but also class size, we presented to the freshman class during what they call wind block. And for those of you who are not familiar with how the high school operates, is at the end of the day, it's approximately 1 hour, and other students have other opportunities to be going to see teachers or to be working on major projects or so forth, but often certain grades come together to have presentations. So Michael returned for in-person presentation with our freshman class. The class assembled during wind block to hear Mikey's engagement, the audience, with his humor as he makes us reflect on our individual roles in creating a society where everyone belongs. He stresses not to be a bystander. For many of our students who are coming out of pandemic where they struggle with isolation, anxiety, and depression, Mikey focused on who you are, not what others expect you to be. In the evening, Mikey also spoke to parents, and it was very interesting. Many of the parents that came to the presentation came because their kids encouraged them to come and hear the message. And this is something we really strive for. We love parents and kids to hear the same message, to be able to continue the conversations when they're home. And when certain circumstances arise, they can bring to mind what they have learned in these presentations. Okay, next up. During pandemic, isolation, and so forth, kids, their friendships changed, their friendships groups changed. Some people were more out and about, others were truly respecting to be isolated and not be socializing and so forth. And there were some concerns with parents about returning to school and the adjustment kids had to make where they belonged and who they belonged with. We partnered on this presentation with parent to parent because some of the requests came out of their group as well. Emily Ward, who was one of our school social adjustment counselors, made a presentation on friendship actually as a professional development day to all our teachers at the high school. The teachers were also noticing the awkwardness for some of the kids coming back, not having seen kids or socialized with them in a while, and not, I put it kind of like their pecking order, like where do I belong? I belonged here before, now people aren't accepting me, people have moved on, things have changed. So when we heard that she had done that presentation, we thought it would be definitely worthwhile to bring her. She came and she talked about friendships as essential to the well-being and how it takes work to foster healthy relationships, not only for our kids, but adults as well. And we all know as parents that sometimes we as parents can get involved in these friendships and the complexities that happen between kids on any given basis. And we have to be careful of that because, and somehow we have to let our kids work through some of these situations, but also parent to parent does not always work when we don't understand the full problem of what's going on with our kids. So she touched upon friendship skills and how to explore the friendship scale between true friends and frenemies. She also talked about relational aggression and toxic versus healthy relationships. Parents learn tools to help their kids expand their thinking from do they like me to what am I looking for in a friend? So we were very happy with the results of this. And then we had our good friend, John Madelman, come from Minding Your Mind. John's been with us many times before. You know, I belong to regional coalitions and many of us have John come speak time to time because his messaging is so valuable to so many of us. With the need of each of us to be proactive in supporting the mental health of our kids, popular speaker John Madelman returned for a virtual parent caregiver presentation on how we can manage anxiety, optimize wellness, and keep our families in balance as COVID-19 restrictions changed. Kids were back in school, the winter months were upon us. John was joined by young adult speaker Wes, who shared his lived experiences as a student who struggled with anxiety. He told the story of his struggle starting in 3rd grade and how he found positive supports on his way to recovery. We all know that these stories are really some of the best way of communicating. They resonate. It's something that people can grasp onto and learn from and kind of be reflective with your own personal circumstances. And then we had another request from parents because they were seeing changes, especially among the girls, but we learned a tremendous amount of eating disorders among young boys now. Stephanie Haynes, who is from, why am I blocking? Where's Stephanie from? Well, Walden Behavior. She did a virtual presentation on eating disorders. Her program raised awareness about the prevention and treatment of eating disorders. The main focus was conversation on prevention, identification, and treatment. And it was very eye-opening, as I said. I was not aware, and we've had Stephanie come and talk with us before about the real concern among, like I said, the young boys. And we had some people who were on the Zoom who really expressed concern what they were seeing at the home, which gave permission to others to be able to express what they were seeing as well. And she gave great resources, but also connected with people, gave her connection, her email and so forth, so people could connect with her on an individual basis of their own concerns with their children. And then we hadn't done, the last time, this was one, sex, drugs, and Netflix. We invited Dr. Aaron Weiner, and he partnered with our community resource officer, Mike DeRosa, on sex, drugs, and Netflix. We had a talk on social media, as we said, with Katie Greer at the beginning of the season, but people pick and choose what they hear and what they want to get out of a presentation. And this one is really more about influences, the TV programs they're watching, the rock stars, the people that they feel are so important in their lives, how they influence kids in other ways besides just on a day-to-day basis with their cell phones. So we had, excuse me, 1 minute. We had Dr. Weiner come, and he really talked about the influence of social and popular media. His program objectives were to stress the understanding of the connection between on-screen behavior and real behavior, and what makes teens more vulnerable or resistant to the influence learned from watching these people that they think are so important in their lives. Examples of what is seen on Netflix, YouTube, and HBO were highlighted. He also taught strategies for communicating with your teen about substance use and sexual content in media. Sergeant DeRosa also shared, again, so now this was presented, what was it in, I think it was January. He had been at school again a few months, and what he was starting to see, again, misuse of the cell phones, devices, and so forth, and kids interacting with one another. So it was interesting. People really got to see Mike in his role as a community resource officer. He'd be walking through the fellows and people would stop and comment to him and say, I really enjoyed your presentation the other night. I got a lot out of it. So again, the connection, bringing what we have as resources in our town to our people, and then taking away the information, which is the main objective for the coalition. March 4th, 2020. We brought mental health after high school. It was a great, great, great program. We did it at WinCam. It was a lunch and learn, and we had a panel discussion. That was the last time we were able to reach out to the parents for those who were sending their kids off to college or to other trades and other occupations that they were going to pursue. Coalition partners with Amber Haynes, our adjustment counselor at Winchester High School, and we worked together in planning this program. We had people from Boston University, Middlesex Community College, and a former Winchester High School student who were on the panel discussion. The format is such that we talk about mental health once you leave the home, what your resources are, what you need to look for. So often when people go to campuses, they're looking at the cafeteria, they're looking at the bookstore, they're looking for the social life, but do we really know how to help our kids to connect with the mental health resources? Not waiting for crisis, but to know where they are and how to find them and how to work with the people to use them. This was more than a successful program. We're very proud of it, and we will continue to do it every year. In the beginning of the program, as people were eating lunch, we showed the documentary, What Made Maddie Run, a UPenn star athlete who on the surface looked like she had everything going for her. She had been recruited by many schools, and all of a sudden the Ivy League came after her. Now, that she never even thought of herself as being an Ivy League athlete, got a little enamored with it. That was the school she chose to go to. But when she was there, she was overcome with a lot of anxiety, depression, how to manage being a star athlete at a Division I school, how to do your schoolwork, how to have a social life and so forth. And when the parents started to see her decline, by Christmas time, she was not the same gal they had sent off. And unfortunately, as the story continues, one day, Madison couldn't cope with it anymore. She climbed a 9th-floor building and jumped from the building and committed suicide. So these are a little bit shocking to share with parents, but these are some of the stories they need to hear and to be on the lookout for some signs of a child struggling that may be far away and you can't be there right away. That's why it's so important to be able to connect them with the mental health resources on campus. And then in May, we had Harry Cunane come. He wrote a book with his mom, Madeline Dean, who's a congresswoman from Pennsylvania. Last July, Winchester lost a young man to an overdose. And I have a book containing all the kids that we have lost over time. And it had been a couple of years, and then this hit home again. And I had been watching CNN, and Jake Tapper interviewed Madeline Dean and Harry. And the story is amazing. It's a great read. I would encourage anybody to purchase it. It's at Bookends. His son that battled a drug addiction, went through recovery, and the mother who supported her son through this. So when we had the loss and I saw this this interview, I reached out and I felt they have to come to Winchester. And even on a sunny August afternoon at 3 o'clock on a Friday, I was able to connect with Harry and he made the commitment of coming here. My goal was to have both of them come because the story is amazing. They set out to write this book. They made an outline of the chapters they wanted to cover and what they wanted. Each one wrote separately. It is very, very interesting. And I think for all of us in our lives, how Harry's version was so very different from Mom's version and what was going on in their lives. Some of this turmoil was going on when Madeline Dean was running for Congress. And, let's face it, there's a whole stigma attached to when we have someone battling addiction or even in recovery, or sometimes not even meeting the success of it. So Harry came in May. Madeline was not able to come, unfortunately. My goal also was to have them speak to our high school students. Unfortunately, schedules don't always work. It was Harry that chose the date. There had been enough assemblies at the high school that we could not fit him in one more time. However, it was a great presentation at the library at Winchester High School. Mike Day came and worked with us on it. We had recovery coaches, we had counselors from the high school, our SRO, plus many parents. And as everybody walked away, they said, he has to come back. He has to talk to our kids. And it's a story that has to be, listened to and learned. So that was very successful as well. And our last program was with the NAN Project. This is around suicide prevention as well. Our wellness director, Jason Levine, had worked with the NAN Project when he was working in Wakefield. When he came to Winchester, it's always been the goal to get the NAN Project into Winchester. But however, again, we all know the story. We were unable to bring people into the school. But this spring, he was able to bring the NAN Project twice in April and twice in May. They worked with the 8th graders, and both with Nicole Pinot's class and Trish Wallace's class. And it's a peer-to-peer model in working with the kids around mental illness and how to understand, not be the counselor, but how to work with the approach creates a safe space for students to discuss what's going on in their lives, how to find that one significant person that you can turn to. And we all know we really stress that with our kids early on, that there has to be one person. I always admire at the high school, if you knew how many people have confidants in the lunch ladies, that they feel that comfortable that they can go and talk to them. And of course, the lunch ladies then support them, but also help them connect with the officials at the counselors at the high school. But It can be the custodian, it could be the French teacher, the athletic director, whatever, but that one significant person that's really important in their lives. NAN project will be coming back again in the fall, working with the high schoolers with their mentor program. Again, peer-to-peer model. And this is one thing that we found has been very, very successful. And then I think, we had some incidents within Winchester that, so we brought the RAD program and we offered it to women in town in the evening, and some of them partnered with their daughters to attend. It was more than successful. The coalition has brought the RAD program. I think it's approximately 9 years now. It began right before the school was renovated. And it's really not self-defense. It's more physical defense, how to think about situations that you may be uncomfortable in or find yourself in. It is a system of, they provide women with the knowledge to make an educated decision about resistance. We also have this at the high school. We were able to work with over 200 young women in the winter time because we had to play catch up for all the time that we were not able to offer this program because it is a physical encounter and so forth, and we were not able to be in such close space with them. Mental Health Awareness Month is May, and the coalition for their wrap-up meeting had Georgia, who was the young girl that spoke at the college program, who talked about her experiences with mental health while she was at Winchester High School and beyond. She shared her story, which was definitely worthwhile hearing. We shared, as we sat there in the room with many of our coalition members, we all know this, again, the stories resonate and they're so important for people to hear. And we will bring Georgia back a few times more to meet with some of our high school students, a mentor program and so forth, so that people start to feel more comfortable in sharing and being able to find support within the community. So that was pretty much, of course, we had our take back disposal, which I think you already knew. We had in the fall, we collected 467 pounds of unwanted medication. In the spring, 280 pounds. So that's a rough overview of, there's a lot more that went on. We are working with our wellness, mental health wellness, social worker on programming as well, and looking at trends and seeing what needs to be addressed. And yeah. And we still have interface going strong. We'll be getting, I checked in, we'll be getting our final report from December through May and June. So you'll be hearing more about that as well. Greg, you have a question?
Hi. First, I just wanted to say thank you so much, both for the presentation and the quality of the work that's been going on. I've attended a number of those. I encourage our public who are listening in to look for upcoming coalition presentations. There's a lot to be proud of in that year's service to our community. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
And yes,
yeah.
Dr. Sawicki.
Yeah, I was just going to say, thank you for that overview. You obviously have done a lot of work for many years putting all these programs together, and I think they really are a service to the community. And I hope that these kind of things can continue, and I know they will. I just, I know that I recently attended and I know a few meetings ago, you presented some of the YRBS data in the schools. And I think this is something that we need to be thinking about as a Board of Health more broadly moving forward in terms of the sort of ongoing challenges that youth in our schools are facing. Some of them are obviously highlighted in the programs you've done. Others that I think might be areas where we could help think about what other programs might be helpful to try to address some of the issues that have been identified locally in the school service. And I know one of the things we talked about is partnering with the school committee broadly about these kinds of health impact and issues. And I think as we're communicating and having conversations with the school committee, really digging into those data and figuring out how best to serve the teenagers populations and young adult populations in Winchester is going to be so important. So again, thank you.
Thank you.
Ruth, you're on mute.
Thank you again, Mrs. Butler. If there are no further comments from the board members, I'm not seeing any. Ms. Murphy, did you want to go ahead with COVID update? Is there any update that you want to offer today?
Jen, you're on mute.
Thank you. I can certainly review the latest data if you'd like me to walk through that. If you prefer to do that, Ruth, that's perfectly fine as well. It's up to you. I can put up the pages of, you know, our dashboard, the MWRA, and so forth, and go through that a little bit if you'd like.
Yes, please. Go ahead.
Sure. And while I'm teeing this up here to get to these web pages, I just want to mention that we will be posting, we did get a lot of inquiries about monkeypox, the monkeypox virus. And I do want to mention that we will put a link to the CDC. So if people are interested in this this illness, which is rare, I want to say that, and the risk is extremely low. But if people are interested in reading more, we will have that link to the CDC posted on the health department page tonight or tomorrow. But I do recommend that people really, you know, read it so that you can understand what the real risk is, and that it is in fact low for the community at large. So it's an important read. Okay. Great. Can you see that?
Yes.
Great. Okay. So here is a snapshot of the North wastewater system on the MWRA website, something that we've all looked at because it gives us really the best indication now of the true prevalence of a disease. And we can see that we're starting a downward trend. Again, we're still fairly elevated in our case counts, which is why, you know, I opted to write a letter to the school community last night, just advising, you know, masking while indoors, because we still are seeing those elevated case counts. And this wastewater data, it seems promising, but it's very early. And let's just hope it continues on this downward trend. The weather is cooperating and is in our favor. So this is all good news. But again, please just be mindful while you're in indoor spaces with others that the risk of transmission is still very high. So something to keep in mind. And if we can encourage people, the more we can encourage people to mask up while indoors in public spaces, the better off we'll be in limiting that spread for us all. You know, it's towards the end of the school year, which is good news for a lot of people, but we want those days, last days, to be as healthy as possible with kids being in school and enjoying those end of the year activities as much as possible. And so there is the wastewater. Again, we'll be tracking that. I don't believe that they've updated it for the past few days since the 19th. So we'll wait and see what that data says. Here is the dashboard for Winchester. We've updated that for the week, for last week. And as you can see, we're also mimicking a little bit of a downward trend. Again, these are only official cases, but it's good to get some context from where we were on the left-hand side of the chart from early January to where we are now. Again, still a little bit elevated. We're experiencing a blip due to B212, all Omicron. But you know, this variation was even more transmissible to the last. So hopefully we're on a good trend here. And that was just our positivity rate that was published last week. It's a rolling 2-week positivity rate. And you'll see we were a little bit over 9%. So, and just to let you know, I'll scroll down to the monthly case count here. And as you can see, for official cases, we were up to 275 in April. We are already up to 360 for May, but we knew we experienced, you know, an even greater uptick for the month of May. Again, turning around. So fingers crossed on that. We are, right now, we're holding a vaccine clinic here in Town Hall. It was from 5 to 6, so it's ongoing right now. We had 43 people signed up. And which is great. We're happy to vaccinate those 43 people, mostly boosters. People signed up for boosters, but we still have some people just starting their series. So this is good. It's a worthwhile thing to do, and we will continue to do it. And especially now that the boosters for the 5 to 11-year-olds were approved, we will look to set up a clinic I would like to do that before school ends, and I think we can do that as long as we receive our standing orders from the state and our software is, is tweaked so that we can in fact use it to hold that clinic soon. So stay tuned, and I will make sure that I, put out some messaging around that booster clinic for 5 to 11-year-olds very soon. And also the testing clinic that we have set up for this Thursday from 4 to 5 at Town Hall is free. And I'm not sure if it's the free or the fact that we're still in a little bit of a surge, but we do have 73 people signed up, which is a lot more than our last clinic where we only had, I believe it was 47 people. So this is good. So I encourage people to come out and get a PCR test for this Thursday. And if you can just register on our website first, that would be very helpful. And if you can't attend, please cancel your appointment. And we'll also continue to do those as needed. However, I do expect, barring anything wacky going sideways with COVID this summer, and I hope that it does not, we may take a brief hiatus on the PCR testing and then ramp up right before, later August before school starts again. So we'll take a little bit of a break, probably June, July, early August, unless we have reason to hold a testing clinic. But we'll focus on the vaccination, the boosters for the 5 to 11-year-olds. That'll be our next mission. And so, does anyone have any questions about that?
I just wanted to note, Jen, that in the last hour or so, they did update one more data point. It may or may not be. It's not a big deal. It's dropped 5 points, but that we could be looking at a leveling off. But as you frequently say, we don't have any crystal balls, so we'll wait to see. Dr. Sawicki, question.
Yep. Thank you, Jen, for showing us all that data. I think it's really great that you and your team have been keeping on top of things and particularly planning the vaccine clinics. And again, particularly with the news of boosters being available for 5 to 11-year-olds. And as a parent of someone who's in that age range, I'm excited that that news is available and that we'll be able to have a town clinic coming up for those kids. I think that's going to be very important. And so thank you for that. And thank you for your work with the schools and your messaging to the school community that went out last night as well.
Sure, you're welcome.
With that, then, not seeing my colleagues to have more comments, we'll move to the 6th item on our agenda, which is a COVID update. We have the update there, but a possible vote. I know that there's at least 2 issues that we'll want to consider. One regards town meeting and another more broadly. I remind my board members that the town meeting mask order reads, if no action is taken by the Board of Health to rescind it, this regulation will remain in effect throughout the duration of the spring town meeting. Legal counsel did recently recommend that to avoid any ambiguity, the Board of Health could vote to clarify that our intent included all of the spring town meetings, including the special town meeting. And if we put an addendum with that clarification language and the date on the order, then the order stands until it is rescinded. To that end, I have done that. Oops. And so I am proposing this, that at the bottom of the standing COVID-19 public health emergency regulation of the Winchester Board of Health, it's dated April 22nd, and this is regarding town meeting, that we put in this single line as an addendum. The intent of this public health emergency regulation is to include all spring town meetings, including all 2022 special town meetings, and dated May 23rd, 2022. So I open it up to my colleagues for consideration, and if there is none, we would move to a vote. Dr. Sawicki.
So have you made a motion or is not yet?
You can make a motion and then we'll have the discussion. Sure.
Well, I would move that we add the language as described.
Ms. Pimentel, do you care to second that? I will second that. So now the motion is on the table for the addendum as I just read it. And I can
Well,
circulate it for Gina. Go ahead, Dr.
And I'll
Stuckey.
explain the reasoning for that is that we're still in CDC high risk for Middlesex County in terms of transmission rates. We've had a successful town meeting sessions with the majority of people being masked, which I think likely would not have happened had we not been having these discussions and putting a mandate in place. I think for the health and well-being of the various members of town meeting that we discussed in the past, that many include people who are senior or immune compromised, and the fact that it's in a large indoor venue, there's no reason for me to consider that we should rescind or change our recommendation or mandate for this particular special town meeting.
Further discussion? Seeing none, we'll call for a roll call vote on the addendum for the town meeting mask mandate. Dr. Sawicki,
Aye.
Ms. Pimentel,
No.
and it is aye for Ruth Trimarchi, so that's 2-1. The addendum is adopted. All right. I would also just, I guess, like to ask whether we have any information regarding the possibility of holding town meeting using the tent that the high school is using for graduations. So that would be a further wonderful mitigation effort. And I have no information on that, but if any of my colleagues or Ms. Murphy does, then appreciate hearing it. Otherwise, I may try to see whether that could possibly be an additional mitigation option that we could take. Does anyone, my colleagues or Ms. Murphy, know anything more about that?
I don't,
Yeah,
but
okay, yeah.
initiate that conversation immediately if that's the direction you're heading.
Well, it simply was not something that occurred to me until one of my neighbors was talking about their child. And I says, oh, that maybe that's something we could at least look into and have the conversation. So we'll see what we can do about that. So that with that, we can move to a broader consideration. And Dr. Sawicki, I believe you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Thank you. I'd like to sort of comment on sort of the data that Jen presented and the data that we talked about in terms of statewide, in terms of where we are as a town, and I think what our role is as the Board of Health. You know, our role is to sort of be monitoring the data and be mindful of it, and we have been doing so in our last couple of meetings. We did focus on the indoor gathering around town meeting for a very particular reason, but over the last month, we've seen a case rate increase, not only in the town, as was noted by Jen's data and the dashboard, but also in the school system, with multiple schools in the elementary, middle, and high school all showing an increased number of cases over the past month, much more so than any other month other than the month of January when we had the original Omicron surge. I think it's important for us as a Board of Health to be aware that this surge is happening, but also to provide recommendations. And so I want to commend Jen Murphy for her work with the school department and the superintendent in creating that communication and collaboration to really put in measures in place with the schools as the surge was ongoing. And that included the essentially case contacts that the health department has been doing. And I'm not sure the public is aware of all that, but I know the school public is aware, but it was sort of shifted that the health department was now contacting families of children who were testing positive on day 5 to make sure that they were remaining asymptomatic prior to school and to remind them of the requirements to be masked for the next several days as per CDC guidelines after a positive case. And I think that that in and of itself was a really important step to ensure the collaboration between the health department and the school department to ensure the safety of kids going back to school, that they weren't going to be potentially reinfecting other students. That said, we know that there are other things that were happening in schools that may be leading to increased risk for transmission of a more transmissible virus. That includes the lunch situation being shifted from a more spaced and distanced lunch situation prior to spring break to afterwards when we started to seeing that rise. This was brought to the attention to the school department and the school committee, and we learned that it was really unfortunately unable to be mitigated in any way. But I think it's important for us as a Board of Health to note that that is not ideal in terms of mitigation strategies, and that we should be able to put in place or think about measures within the school system that will help protect the students and the student body and the staff as well. We saw continued rises of Omicron cases over the last couple of weeks. There was a communication from the superintendent that, again, Jen and her team helped craft, which did recommend that students go back to school with masks. And I don't know the impact of that particular communication, although I do recognize that there's different considerations in a population that's perhaps more vaccinated, like the high school and middle school, to one that maybe is a little bit less vaccinated in the elementary schools. That said, we saw a continued rise up until last week, and hopefully we'll see some changes or decline over the next several weeks. But I think it behooves us as a Board of Health to be very vigilant and also strong in our recommendations around what should be done both in the schools and the town. And so I think we have three choices. One is to say nothing and do nothing. And I personally do not think that that is a wise idea. The second is to actually go back to think about reinstatement of mask requirements in certain situations. That's certainly been done in certain towns, neighboring towns in the area. And there have been certain school systems that have done this as well at the outset. There are schools in Arlington and other neighboring communities that had similar outbreaks recently over the last couple of weeks, in which school department officials, principals, or superintendents have made a decision to require masking at least for short periods of time within the schools. It is clear from our discussions with the school committee and with the school superintendent that that was not a direction that the school committee wanted to take, nor the school superintendent. And that was, I think it's important also to publicly state that, we would have recommended that if there was a surge in a particular school or a classroom, that masking be recommended in a much stronger way than I think was done. I think we've heard several, or at least I have personally heard messages coming from school leadership that they expect the Board of Health to be making these decisions. And I quite frankly am a little disappointed that the school committee has essentially deferred all decision-making to us when they don't want to make difficult decisions. Yet when they made other decisions, like removing some of the mitigation strategies at lunchtimes, they did not confer with the Board of Health nor the Health Department prior to making those changes. So despite that disappointment, and despite the fact that there's been some good collaboration, I think that our messaging does benefit from being stronger with the schools and with the town itself. And so I think the middle ground that can happen is really issuing a Board of Health advisory that is town-wide. And I think that needs to be done to reiterate the messaging, not just that has been sent to the school community, but to send it to the town-wide community, to reiterate the importance of all the mitigation strategies that come from CDC guidance related to our designation in Middlesex County as a high transmission area, and then make sure that we educate the public and continue to message the public that we as the Board of Health do feel strongly that there are things that can be done. And that includes indoor masking for particularly people who are unvaccinated, but also those who are at risk, those who have small children, those who are other, have potential other immune compromised conditions. But I think more broadly in a state of high transmission, to have everyone be indoor masking as much as possible, avoiding congregate settings as much as possible, and being sensible and prudent. And it's not just someone's individual choice to do that. I think that we need to sort of collectively say that it's important that as a community we're working towards that. That doesn't necessarily mean a requirement needs to be in place, but I think strong language needs to come from the Board of Health in the form of an advisory.
Thank you, Dr. Sawicki. Ms. Pimentel, did you have comments that you'd like to make at this time?
Well, I feel like I'm a little out of the loop here because I haven't had any conversations with the school committee or the superintendent, so I'm not quite sure what those conversations entail. But I believe that our messaging is pretty consistent throughout, and the Department of Health has pretty consistent messaging on their website and Digital Dose and all the other avenues that we use to put messaging out. And I don't necessarily believe that we haven't been messaging that people should be masking and quarantining, and that Jen hasn't been upping sort of our involvement as cases have risen. So I'm not quite sure what else, other than the statements we've already made, other than the information we've already put out, other than all of these other things. I believe that we're pushing out the messaging that is coming from the CDC and the federal government, and we've been doing this throughout the entire pandemic. So I'm not quite sure what extra step we need to take. I don't think that anyone doesn't hear the messaging that's coming out right now.
I respectfully
you.
disagree that other people are not hearing it. I think that it's important for there to be an actual statement coming from the board. There are multiple other towns throughout the Commonwealth that have issued actual town-wide COVID advisories in recognition of the change in status that has happened over the last couple of weeks. And I think at the bare minimum, we need to do that.
That's fine. I mean, if you want to put another advisory out, we can. I mean, I don't think it's any different than what Jen's putting out from the entire Department of Public Health, but that's fine.
Yeah, I think it just needs to come from the Board of Health too. I think it's not just the Department of Health. I think I totally acknowledge that Jen's doing yeoman's work in getting all the word out, but I think it's important for us as a board to put a stamp on it as well.
Yeah, I was just confused by two things. One, I was confused by, I know Ruth had asked me to put a mask advisory together on Friday, which I did not do. But then when I got your email back, one was a mask advisory, one was a mask mandate. And I was confused as to what conversations happened around that. And then also what, how you sort of took the reins to write the mandate order, because Jen normally is the person who writes that. So I just didn't know what conversations had with that, because I was also left out of that.
I can partially
Ruth, I think you froze. Maureen, it's not just me, it's Ruth that froze,
No,
right?
it's Ruth. Yeah.
No, it's
Okay.
Ruth.
Yeah. I just texted her to let her know she's frozen. So maybe we can just give it 1 minute unless someone else has something to say.
No, I mean, Maureen, I would say I took it upon myself to contact the school committee and the school department via Jen as well and have those conversations. I recognize that we can't have those conversations, more than one board member at a time with someone else just because of the 3-member nature of the board. And so we needed to inquire and learn about sort of some of the things and also to think about what kind of strategies they were taking as I was thinking about what our appropriate board response would be. In the meantime, I don't know if, can we call up the mask advisory that was drafted? Not the mask advisory, the COVID advisory that was drafted. Or I can pull it up if you want, just so that we can go through it.
Sorry, Ruth, just a little update. Ruth lost internet.
Okay.
And so she is, so you can either take a couple minute little break here and intermission, or you can, you know, proceed. It's up to you. But she's working on it, but
Can't she just call in from her phone?
problematic. She is looking for the number, right? Yeah. Sorry, Greg, what were you looking for?
I was just gonna pull up the document, the COVID advisory document that Ruth had circulated to us this afternoon.
Advisory, okay.
Can you pull it up, Jen, or do you need me to?
Do you have it handy, or because I can?
I should be able to have it in about 30 seconds.
Okay.
And oh, you got it? Okay, great. Thanks, Maureen. So it basically states a lot of the same information that is already either on websites or has come from communications from the health department to various members of the community. But I think this would be a document that I think I would recommend that we endorse as a board. The first paragraph is just telling us that we're currently in a surge and the CDC has designated Middlesex County as a county with high transmission. The second is that—
Can you hear me now?
Yes, Ruth, we're just going over the advisory document right now. It's pulled up.
Ms. Murphy, can you hear? Oh, thank you.
Yes, we can hear you, Ruth. So we're just going through the document. So the second paragraph just says what data that we are reviewing, which is the data we just went over as well. And I just want to point out that as Jen has said, it's an underestimate because of home testing. And our recommendation, I think, should be, which is exactly in the third paragraph, is that it is in the best interest of the community for everyone to resume wearing a mask in all indoor public spaces, which is exactly the CDC guidance based on where we are. And the fourth paragraph is the Board of Health strongly recommends that all individuals wear well-fitting masks in school buildings. And this is something that we've reiterated, and it's come out from communication from the superintendent to parents. So it's not a new recommendation. It's just, I think, the Board of Health endorsing it as well. And we strongly recommend that there measures be taken to allow eating outside or in venues with adequate distancing. And we believe that these are appropriate mitigation measures in the school. We also recommend universal masking indoors in all public buildings. And then we recommend staying up to date with vaccination and including boosters, avoiding crowded indoor spaces, wearing a mask in other crowded indoor spaces and events such as music concerts or graduations, to stay home if you have symptoms and tests. So none of this is information that I think should be controversial to any of my colleagues on the Board of Health, but I think it's important for the board to be officially endorsing the statement, given we are. And I think ultimately where this gets down to the discussion is sort of philosophically, we need to be on, we were told that we were given the charge to be on top of the data, being proactive in terms of messaging, and the health department is absolutely doing that. But we also as a Board of Health need to be strong in terms of ensuring that the public knows and that the town residents know that we are on top of where things are and that we are issuing our own set of recommendations that are aligning with all the things that are coming from the health department. I don't think it's a one or none kind of a communication. And I think ultimately we do need to think about this, what will trigger more aggressive measures. And, you know, I think there are people that will say, well, the only reason to do more measures in Winchester is because another town or state or the country or someone does it. But I think we have our own ability to think about what makes sense for our local community. And when there was a discussion around removing mask mandates, it was because of case counts going down. And so at some point there needs to be thoughts about triggers that may require things to go back into requirements. And even if we're not there yet, I think it's important for the public to understand that it's not going to ever be a completely on-off switch. I think there may be times, whether it be in the spring, the summer, or the fall, where there could be another surge. And I think we just need to, as a board, be very transparent and open about the fact that there may be a time where that's necessary. And though hopefully we're going to not be at a time over the next couple of weeks, and I recognize there's only a few more weeks of school, and I recognize the weather is getting better and we can do things more outdoors, I think it's very important for us as a Board of Health to be very strong in our language and align with the CDC, the state, as well as the health department in messaging, which is why I think we need to endorse this statement.
Thank you, Dr. Sawicki, and my apologies to everyone. Occasionally, the internet fails us, and it just failed me. But I'm linked on with my phone and back. I agree with Dr. Sawicki that this is a very prudent mask advisory. And in light, again, and I'm sorry we were cut off right in the middle of that, in light of the fact that there seems to be general agreement in the community from the people that I have heard from, that ongoing messaging with different voices from different angles is a good tool. It is, in my opinion, the basic tool of public health is public education, and continued and clear and clear messaging around the COVID situation is absolutely our role. So I would strongly support the statement which Dr. Sawicki wrote. In fact, I think it's appropriate at this point in time, I'll make a motion that we vote to have a mask advisory as written. If we have a second, then we can toss that open for further discussion.
I'll second.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Murphy, you look puzzled. Am I skipping a step that you think I should be following here? Okay, great.
So
Ms.
I just
Pimentel,
had,
go ahead.
well, I just had two questions. One is, this is a mask recommendation, I would say, correct? Because we're not
Correct.
really advising. And then the second thing is, I know you guys keep going back and forth about sort of public health, Department of Health, Board of Health, and everything else, but, and correct me if I'm wrong, and I may be wrong, but my understanding of everything that's happened over all of our communications throughout this entire time and going back 100 years with the Department of Public Health and the Board of Health is that we are the Board of Health. We have an agent, which is Jen Murphy in the Department of Public Health. And historically, communications and such that have come out are a collaboration between the Board of Health and the Department of Public Health. So every advisory or mandate or et cetera, has always come from both entities. So I want to be clear that the Department of Public Health, when they're speaking, is, in my mind, speaking on behalf of the Board of Health. So I may be wrong in that, but that is always been sort of the collaborative agreement that they've had with us. So all of the information that comes out from the Department of Public Health is fed through us and or approved or discussed or et cetera via Jen. So Jen is our agent. So I guess in my mind, and I'm happy to support the statement, it doesn't really make a difference to me, but in my mind, these things should be coming from the Department of Public Health in collaboration with the Board of Health. The Board of Health doesn't make separate statements about things, in my mind, but I could be wrong.
It's a good point. Thank you. And in my opinion, the answer is that all of the above are options, and that multiple messaging on such a critical issue as COVID warrants multiple messaging. I would welcome Ms. Murphy if you'd like to add anything to that.
No, I mean, I agree. Actually, I agree with everybody. I do. You're correct, Maureen, in that we should always be on the same page. I would never sort of go out on a crazy limb and say something that was not in line with your policy or your directive collectively as a board. But I also understand that you can take your an action as well, and such as a statement. So I actually agree with everyone.
All right, is there any further discussion?
I just had one other question.
Yes, go ahead.
During public comment, when you earlier today said that we could not vote on a mask mandate, I was confused by that because a mask mandate was sent to us for review. So I'm just confused as to why we wouldn't be able to vote for a mask mandate at this time.
Yes. So I appreciate Dr. Sawicki took the initiative to step forward and propose those statements. The idea, as I understood it, and again, we can only speak in the public meeting about that. Documents can be circulated, but we don't deliberate on those documents until we reach our meeting, which we're in now. The idea behind it, I believe, was that if the data today, and again, it wasn't released as a 4-day lapse, if it had indicated a severe change in one direction or another, that document was, and Dr. Sawicki, you can correct me if I'm wrong, was prepared and available, but in truth, we couldn't have voted on that. A mandate like that would go the same route that it always did, and you're well familiar, Maureen, with that, having done that multiple times. It would go through legal, and it would have a certain template and a certain form. So, you know, I appreciate Dr. Sawicki stepping forward, taking the initiative and writing both a proposal for an advisory as well as a proposal for a mandate, but it would have to have gone through more process, which is why I said at the beginning, we couldn't just step up and just do that in this meeting. Does that
That's
make
incorrect.
sense?
It's incorrect, but understandably, just it could have been, that's incorrect in statement because theoretically it could have been voted on and we could have had it gone through legal channels after the fact. And that's how it's worked with a lot of them. So just so you're clear with the public and messaging, we very clearly could have voted on a mask mandate tonight. So I just want to be clear on that, that if it's on the agenda.
If we had gone to legal and had a.
No, not necessarily. We could have had the document forthcoming. So just to be clear that when we had COVID update on the agenda, and when people start, in a vote, people start going nuts over those things. So I think our messaging should be clear.
Maureen, I agree with you. I mean, my intention was in putting together both draft documents was to think about how the discussion would go and sort of think about what our options would be, and just to be prepared to say, I do think there are some reasons that we would consider whether a mandate would make sense for town operated buildings and town owned buildings and schools. I think there are certainly people that would agree with that view. We've certainly heard from the public and gotten public comment on both sides against reimposing mask requirements and for reimposing mask requirements. There obviously is a split opinion in the public domain. There's a split opinion in a lot of places, and I don't think it's totally out of line for us to be considering it, which is why I had sort of drafted it with the idea saying that if we were going to have a discussion, it would be good to have a document that then could go through legal channels afterwards. I think that where we are right now, given the fact that there seems to be a stabilization in our numbers, and I think the messaging has gone out from the health department and with messaging from us as well to the community.
Cowards, you're cowards.
Can you please? And so the reality is this, is that there are other jurisdictions that would absolutely move towards reinstating masks. As I said, there are schools that have done it. And the fact that our school system has not entertained that.
You don't have kids in school.
I do have kids in school. And
Mr. Beauchamp, you are out of order.
Hold on, Greg, I just want to say one thing. I wasn't commenting on the mandate versus the advisory or anything else.
No,
I was commenting, hold on, just listen. I was commenting on the fact that Ruth said that, and that I just wanted to make it clear that is not clear.
Maureen, you and I agree there that I think we absolutely could have done it.
Yes.
It is not my preference that we have a mandate in our schools. It is my preference that the schools work with the health department as they're doing, but in a stronger fashion to make sure that kids can make it through the last couple of weeks without missing 10 days of school. And there are many kids that are doing that.
I also recommend that we be collaborative with other boards and not sort of comment on boards and their decisions, because I don't think that we're privy to everything that goes on. So with that,
Maureen, I appreciate that, Maureen, but I do want to be very clear here that the school committee has not had a discussion. They have not held a meeting, and they have really, I think that they can also be issuing a statement one way or another around this, and they've deferred to the health department, which I think is in their purview. And if they're deferring to the health department and the Board of Health, then we have every right to be saying what we think our strong recommendations should be.
With that, I do appreciate the robust and diverse opinions on the board. There has been a motion made to accept the advisory. It's been seconded. We've had discussion. I would call for a roll call vote now, unless one of my two colleagues has an additional comment. Seeing none, I call for a roll call vote. Dr. Sawicki?
Aye.
Ms. Pimentel?
I'm inclined to say yes. I have to say, yeah, I don't love some of the language in and around eating outside and all of those things, because I don't think it's under our purview. Well, it's under our purview to make these comments, but it seems, I'm going to say no. I think some of the language should be changed. That's it. It's not the messaging that I have a problem with.
Is there, would you like to make some wordsmithing recommendations regarding it that would that would make it possible for you to vote on this, to vote with A unanimous vote from the board.
It doesn't, I mean, I don't, well, whatever. I no, I'm not going to vote for this. I'm going to either abstain or say no, because I think that some of it needs to be reworked wording wise. So I will say no.
Very good. Thank you for your comments. I appreciate your comments. I appreciate your point of view there. I think it is a very reasonable ask of the community. It is simply a mask advisory. And so without belaboring this any further, since we can't really wordsmith this in this venue here, I'm going to vote yes, it passes. There is now this mask advisory that is going to go out to the public.
It's a recommendation though, not an advisory.
A recommendation.
Just so we're clear.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Thank you. All right. Thank you for that. And I thank you. I see there's a lot of listening public, so we thank them as well for their attendance and listening to that. On new business, I would just like to bring forward, as I mentioned, a couple of issues which we are not going to decide today, but I wanted to float them with the board and to bring them forward. There have been some towns around us who have moved from a 3-member board to a 5-member board of health, and I have discussed this at various times with Ms. Murphy. It is not necessarily an advisable thing to do. It is a complex thing to do. Certainly when the Board of Health was first formed, it was formed to inspect milk cans and milk supplies. And the job has changed over many decades, and it's much more complex, and it involves a great deal more work than it used to, and especially in light of COVID. If the board had, and it is not the board who would do this, but we would have a discussion over time as to the advisability between our current members. But the process would be that an article has to go before town meeting, and that would probably be fall town meeting, given the cycle of the way town meetings work, with the spring focused on budgetary issues. And then that has to have a 2/3 majority vote, because that is a change in the town charter, home rule charter. If it were to gain 2/3 vote, it would then go to the Attorney General, and the Attorney General perhaps and likely would say that it's fine since other towns are doing it, but it has to go through that step. And then it has to return to the town for a majority vote town-wide. And that would be in the spring if we followed that particular scenario of 2024. But that, it could be years from now. But I just wanted to put that out there, put a little thought in our head as to whether we might even want to have a discussion about it, put it on the agenda at some future time. So knowing what the process is, are there any comments from my colleagues about moving from 3 to 5 members as something that you think is advisable for the town? Or do you need more information, maybe?
Say let's table it for another discussion and gather some more information about the pros and cons.
All right, so I just wanted to put that out there for today for us to, we can consider it at any time. There's no timeline on that. The second issue under, let's see, where do we go here? Under new business, I circulated with you a reproductive rights statement, which I asked you to review for possible consideration today. Are there comments regarding the reproductive rights statement? Ms. Pimenta.
No, I am saddened that we are in this place in this world right now, that we're even having to have this conversation in 2022 about women's reproductive rights. I am not sure. I know that there was a comment about whether we should table this and bring it up at our next meeting. I'm happy to do either, whichever anybody wants.
Dr. Sawicki.
I mean, Ruth, if you would like us to just vote for endorsement of the statement, I'm perfectly comfortable if we want to have a discussion now. If you want to just pull up the statement.
I'll pull up this statement and we can have a consideration of it. It's fairly straightforward and simple. Other boards are doing that. One that I'm aware of, and I am not sure of how many there are. This was a very simple statement that I circulated. I'll read it. The Winchester Board of Health is committed to protecting access to reproductive health services, including safe abortion, as a basic public health right. The board recommends that reproductive health information, including legal rights to an abortion in Massachusetts, medical information, funding options, and contact information for locations of service be made readily available in print and digital form in languages commonly spoken in Winchester, including English, Mandarin, and Spanish, and that this information be posted on the Health Department and Board of Health web pages and made available to any organizations or individuals who request it. So it's a fairly simple statement. I need a motion to accept it, and then we can discuss it if you'd like.
Motion to accept.
Second.
Very good. Discussion, further discussion needed?
I think, as Maureen said, it's unfortunate that we have to be having these discussions, but I think that we live in a community and we as a board hopefully can support this statement and state that we are committed as a board and a health department here in town to support basic reproductive rights.
Thank you very much. Okay, so roll call vote. Ms. Pimentel?
Aye.
Dr. Sawicki?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. So that is passed and we will post it as such. Okay, let me try to stop sharing that. With that, I think that brings us to the very end of our agenda for today. I thank the staff, I thank the listening public, and I thank my colleagues. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
Roll call vote. Ms. Pimentel?
Aye.
Dr. Sawicki?
Aye.
And myself, and that is unanimous. We are done today. Again, I thank you all so much. It's been a long and challenging